to another episode of the Collaborative IEP podcast. I'm Ashley Barlow, your host, and I am so happy you are here. Holy cow. This episode may as well be called What the Heck is Happening? I have a lot of notes for you on what's happening in the Federal Department of Education with the layoffs that happened in the last few weeks. I am going to largely read from my outline in this episode because I want for you to really feel empowered with the information. And I also want to make sure that I don't misstate what's happening. But kind of as a header, what I want for you to understand is I am not a doom and gloom kind of a person. I am not a negative person at all. As you know, I like to say that I have relentless optimism. And I think that's a really important advocacy strategy. It's at least true to the collaborative nature of my advocacy. But regardless of ultimately what happened was the Department of Ed, the Trump administration laid off nearly everyone in OSERS and OSEP and arguably the OCR. We're going to get into specifics here in a second, but it, like for the reports are 466 plus employees all the way down to only a few senior staffers. So somewhere like a large chunk of people got laid off. It went to court and the judge temporarily has said those firings can't happen. So that's kind of the headline, right? And we're going to get into a lot of specifics here. But what I want for you to understand is even though things are stayed right now and those layoffs right now can't happen, that process has happened in the past with previous layoffs. And ultimately, courts of appeal said, yes, the layoffs can happen. So not super optimistic about this quick little stay that's happening. And also, I think it's really important to understand that this is what this administration wants. This administration wants to eliminate the Department of Education. And while they understand that they need an act of Congress to do it, they are using the shutdown of the government, the fact that they can't reach an agreement on spending money, as a way to negatively impact the education of America's most vulnerable students with disabilities. So this is retaliation for the budget stuff, the government shutdown. And they're using our children as kind of the bait in that circumstance. It is really important to note that that this is kind of an indication, therefore, that this administration will not stop and will ultimately work to get what they want, the complete dissemination of the Department of Education. And what's scary is it appears as though there's no effort to put in all the cogs of the wheel to do that in a way that ensures the protection of students with disabilities. So we're going to go through this and I am going to kind of take you step by step to like what happened with the court, what are the next steps, etc. So let's start with what happened. So what triggered this round of layoffs at the Department of Ed? Basically what happened was on October 10th, notices went to several staff in the Department of Education. As I said before, some agencies, some articles say that it was exactly 466 staffers. Some say only key leadership people are available. But there was a 4,000 plus employee layoff that happened across the government. They call these reductions in force, which is a big layoff or a firing. And this is secondary to the government shutdown. So Education Week, a news article to which I subscribe, said at the Ed Department, more than 460 employees in at least 6 of 17 offices were told that their last day would be December 9th of 2025. The offices that were hit the hardest were the Office of Special Education Programs, OSEP, and the Office of Civil Rights, OSER. One report said that OSEP would drop to fewer than 5 staff if the plan proceeded. Okay, that's another Ed Week article. And of course, OSERS is under OSEP, so OSERS is hit hard as well. So, of course, somebody filed a lawsuit. The lawsuit is called American Federation of Government Employees versus Trump. And this, you can look it up. It's Northern District of California. I don't know why they chose that district, but I do know that the judge that heard this case also is a judge that stayed layoffs earlier in March of 2025. Her name is Susan Ilston. I assume that's how you say it. Illston. So American Federation of Government Employees, that's a union, versus Trump, got filed. And basically what the judge said, and that it went to hearing on October 15th. Okay. And Judge Ilston issued what's known as a temporary restraining order. So when you go to court, you are asking either for money or you're asking for somebody to do something or not to do something. And when you do that, it's called an injunction. And so basically, they were saying restrain the government, Trump, the Trump administration, from being able to institute these layoffs. And so the judge did do that, and the order was called a restraining order. Notably, it's temporary, meaning it's not permanent, right? So this blocked the Trump administration from issuing the RIF notices, those reduction in force, or implementing them, quote unquote, during or because of the government shutdown. She said that the cuts were probably, quote, illegal and excessive authority and arbitrary and capricious, which is the standard. So that was a nice, strong quote. The next hearing is set for later this month. I've read a couple of different dates, but sometime in October 2025. It looks like October 28th, 2025, which is a week from the date that this gets out. I cannot find the case, which is really interesting. I'm sure that it exists. I honestly have not had a whole lot of time and took the weekend off away from my computer because this was exhausting me. So if you go looking for the case or if you find it, please feel free to send it over to me. I would love to read the TRO, and I would also love to read the transcript. So when this case goes before the judge at the end of the month, that TRO could move over to a preliminary injunction, just kind of a little bit of civil procedure. So, hopefully that would further stay these layoffs. So, obviously, let's talk about impact here. Why does this matter, right? How does this impact our Department of Ed and buy-in through the Department of Ed extend out into our students? So OSEP, OSERS, and OCR are basically on the chopping block. So the monitoring of special education programs, compliance type stuff, and also oversight of literally billions of dollars of federal K-12 grants could be significantly impaired. Like the real question is, who is doing the research, who is monitoring compliance, and who is saying yes to getting money out to the states and to the school districts. So when we went through IDEA step by step here on this podcast, we talked a lot about those mechanisms. We talked about the research dollars. We talked about other, grant monies. We talked about oversight and compliance. We talked about how all that data goes. And honestly, when we did that podcast, I was not planning on this. I don't know how you could have anticipated that this would happen, right? But if you go back through that and you think about how IDEA works, and that's just IDEA, right? Like that isn't any of the mechanical Department of Ed laws and regulations. You see the impact of having nobody there to monitor compliance and to monitor the spending. This is really important because we are funded through 2026. But at the end of 2026, it's quite possible that funding mechanisms will be changed or non-existent or confused really, really significantly. Um, so how is that going to impact students? We really don't even know because it's almost like too hard to conceptualize. Now, I have exchanged voice memos with a lot of you on social media in the last week. And, a lot of you have really good questions like, what happens to the enforcement of the laws? And what I want for you to understand is that IDEA still exists, right? So the funding still has to occur by law. The compliance still has to occur by law. The oversight still has to occur by law. Students' rights still have to be implemented by law, and we can cite the law. But if nobody is there to enforce and oversee the enforcement of the law is significantly weakened, right? And the court system is going to get really, really overworked and overburdened here. And so our state governments are going to have a lot of tax. Also, not like tax dollars, but like they are going to be taxed. They're going to have a really heavy lift. In other words, tax is probably a bad choice of words. So in my opinion, we should be also going to our state departments of ed and saying, oh my gosh, like, how can we help you to ensure, even if IDEA enforcement comes to the states because the Department of Ed is gone, even if it goes to Health and Human Sciences or it goes to the Office of Civil Rights or wherever these laws go to be enforced at the federal level, the lift is going to be heavier at the state level. How can we help you to ensure that if things go as smoothly as possible in this undoubtedly inevitable transition that we are in education and in special education in America? Again, like even reading the words and the regulations, the words of IDEA and the regulations, like word for word, line by line, it's just so hard to conceptualize, even for me that's worked in this industry for 20 years. So I think those are things that we can explore, right? Like, I think we can explore like, what it actually means for special education students, and our state departments of ed if special education and civil rights enforcement are gutted, if those offices are gutted. I also think we can explore further here on the podcast how the shutdown context kind of changed the like legal calculus for these rifts across agencies like the Department of Ed. I I haven't seen anything on this, and again, I haven't gone looking very much because I had a really busy week last week and needed to shut my computer this week, or this weekend. But, I'd really like to look at the historical precedent. How have has there ever been a time that we've had such broad rifts across the government? Um, ma- eh, eh, what presidents have done things in a retaliatory nature like that? And how did they work their way out of it, right? Like, how can we learn from history there? And then, like, what are the employees doing? Obviously, the unions immediately filed a lawsuit, but one union, and I don't like I said, I can't find the lawsuit, so I don't know if there were other plaintiffs or not. And, if this temporary restraining order is lifted, then what safeguards remain in place for students and schools and state government? Those are kind of my primary questions as I have read these articles. I just kept a list of questions at the end. So, those are things that we can explore as we go into this. What to expect here at Ashley Barlow at the Collaborative IEP. And for me, I am putting together a challenge for you guys. We are going to get together for 4 weeks here coming up soon. It's going to launch here soon, I promise. We're going to get together for 4 weeks, really quick little video snippets to get your affairs in order. Because without oversight, without funding, with like absolute chaos and anarchy, I think that the first clear step is to make sure that our ducks are in a row at the local level with our individual kid. So put your kid in a picture And think about that kid every single day. Every single time you look at your child, at bedtime or whenever it is, think to yourself, we've got to get this in order. I'm going to ensure that your education is protected and that your rights are protected. And that might mean educating for you at your individual school with these individual humans, because we might have to get them to support you and teach you because they want to, not because they have to. And so I'm putting together kind of this 4-step plan. It'll be extremely affordable, extremely quick, a fairly low lift with hopefully really high impact. So that's what I can offer to you to help. And in fact, I'm signing off now because I got to build it. Have a great week. I will see you next week, same time, same place.